Plugins, they are the cornerstone of production and producing. You put them into your software and they allow you to do things to the tracks and the music. A common misconception is that you need really expensive plugins to make your track sound better, and it's just completely not true. So in this video I've got 8 examples of plugins you can use that are completely free that do the same thing as the paid for plugins, and you'll get just as cool a sound and you haven't got to spend anything. So you can improve production without paying a penny for anything. Before we dive into some of these plugins, it's a good idea to know that most software comes with a lot of base plugins that can pretty much get the job done anyway. Talking like compressors, EQs, saturators, all that sort of stuff. There will be plugins native to the program that you can use, so it's always worth exploring those as well. You definitely don't need to do everything with third-party plugins. You can use plugins in the software. I use loads of them, so don't neglect the built-in plugins, because some of them are going to be just as good and you haven't even got to install them. They're already there, they're just part of the program. One of the keys to getting a good master, I think, is getting that lightness, that sort of bit of breath of the track. And something that's used a lot is called air. Now there's this plugin by Brainworks called Black Box, and it has this air button on it. You press it, it makes everything sound sparkly and bright and stuff. There's another plugin you can use which does exactly the same thing. Fresh Air is a plugin by Slate Digital. You can download it for free. Just go to the website, search for it, download it and install it. You get your mids and your highs, and you can make the mix sparkle and pop a bit. So you get the same thing as that Air from Brainworks, but it's completely free, and it's one I use in pretty much every track since I downloaded it. So yeah, worth installing. Now saturation. When saturation is used correctly in a track, it makes everything sound so much better. It just sounds fuller. You put it on individual instruments or sounds. You also put it in the master. It sounds brilliant. Now there's a lot of built-in saturators in programs. If you want to use a third-party one though, Saturation Knob by Softube. It's literally a dial that you turn up to increase saturation. Use it minimally. Saturation oversaturated sounds awful. So just turn it up a little bit, but it's really good. I use it a lot. And it's literally one dial. You load it up and you turn the dial around, and that is it. A way to give your tracks a bit of width as well. So when it comes to stereo width, it's always good to push some of the smaller sounds and quieter sounds out more to the sides for the listener. Now one that's used a lot is Brainworks Stereo Maker. It's really, really good, but again, it's a Brainworks product, so it's quite expensive. Another version you can use instead, Ozone Imager 2 by Isotope. Now Isotope are a big company. They have a lot of paid for plugins. But this one that they do is completely free. It's called Ozone Imager 2. And you can literally turn up a dial that increases the width of a particular sound. Also, it has a really cool imager that shows you the width of the general track that you put it on as well. Now, multi-band compression. I've actually done a whole separate video on compression, but multi-band compression is a really good way to compress certain frequencies in a particular track, or again, in the master. Now, a very commonly used one is FabFilter Pro MB. If you want multi-band compression, a lot simpler than that, and you haven't got to pay for it, OTT. Now anyone that's been producing for a while or has even thought about production has probably heard of OTT. It's probably one of the most famous free plugins out there. It's really good to use, really simple. It allows you to compress different bands and frequencies. You get some really big sounds out of it. You can compress just the mids, just the highs. You can change the depths, the gains. It's got quite a lot of functionality, but it's a lot simpler to use. Another great one that you've probably heard of if you're in production at all is Camel Crusher. Now Camel Crusher is sort of like compression and distortion sort of merged into one, and it has a lot of really cool presets. So if you want to get some cool distortion like compression and sort of get a weird sound out of a particular synth or something, you've got to use Camel Crusher. It's worth downloading just to have, because it can create some really cool sounds that you never would have thought of. It doesn't necessarily replace any paid for versions, because I've never even thought about a paid for version, because this is just exactly what you need it for. So yeah, Camel Crusher. Now limiters are vital to getting a track up to professional sound. To get the volume right so it's playable in a big space, you need a limiter on a track. You've got limiters in programs, but you've also got very expensive ones like the FabFilter Pro L2 again, or the Brainworks XL. You know, there's a lot of limiters out there which are very expensive with a lot of functionality. So if you want a simple limiter that is completely free, I would recommend LoudMax 64. The LoudMax, it definitely doesn't have the same functionality as one of these expensive limiters, but it does have a gain function and it limits. So that's really all you need, because limiters, again, unless you're going to go really in depth at how you're going to use your limiter, you just want to increase the gain a little bit. Give it a go. LoudMax 64. Finally, we've got reverb. Now reverb is a vital part, like a lot of these are, to making a good track. It adds space to particular sounds, it gives it a bit more realness, makes it feel like it's in a particular environment. Reverb is very important. Now you have a lot of built-in reverb in programs, loads of different presets, but if you want a bit more functionality with your reverb and you really want to dial it in, there is a really good free reverb out there, opposed to using your Fab Filters, your Brainworks, your UAD certified reverbs. You know, don't bother about paying for those. Instead, just go for the OrilRiver plugin. Now, it doesn't look the best, I have to admit, but it's got a lot of good functionality in reverb, and it's got a lot of presets as well. So even if you don't want to mess around and create your own reverb settings, it's got lots of great presets you can use. So one worth checking out, I do use it quite a bit. When you're starting out in production, it's more about getting the techniques down, testing things out. Don't bother spending loads of money on plugins, because just paying for the plugin isn't going to make the track sound better. Gear doesn't equal skill. Go online and search for a free alternative to so, because there'll always be one out there that you can try and use. It might not be quite as effective or quite as visual, quite as interesting, but it will get the job done if you want to use more third-party plugins. I'll leave a link to every one of those in the description. All of those alternative plugins mentioned are completely free, so it's worth checking them out, trying them. If you don't like them, you haven't got to use them anymore, just thought I'd recommend some really good ones out there that I personally use and have got as much out of without having to pay for the £80 FabFilter reverb or the limiter or whatever it is. You just don't necessarily need them. Look for the free alternative, improve your skill, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day.